Hi guys, thanks for joining us today. So today I'm here with a very special guest and he goes by the name of Dr. John Bowman. So Dr. B, as he's known, is a clinical psychologist and certified mental performance consultant-emeritus with the Association for Applied Sport Psychology. He's also a member of the American Psychological Association and the American Society for Clinical Hypnosis. He's also on the United States Olympic Sport Psychology Registry. He has a wealth of experience using hypnosis in sport. He's been generous enough to share his time with us today. Welcome, Dr. B. It's great to have you.
Oh, James, it is such a pleasure and an honor to be here with you today. I really appreciate the opportunity to go back in time and to expand the perspective of where hypnosis as this remarkable natural phenomenon of the mind has now played a part in performance in sport over these last 50 years. Going back to the late 70s, 80s, sports hypnosis was considered really non-scientific. There was no idea in the sports psychology world really where it was supposed to fit in. It was this mysterious thing that other people were doing, but not mental training people. They were doing mental training. And it's incredible how over time, the volume of research and interest has kind of gone logarithmically, so to speak. It was kind of a little into, and then into the 2000s, and then now it's kind of, we're at the kind of the bend where the exponential curve is moving up. And I think we're really at a watershed moment where this phenomenon that is a very natural part of the way the mind works is going to be applied to health and healing, to personal growth, and in our case, point of fact, to assisting athletes to perform at their very best, using all of their mental capacities in a way to do that, using hypnosis and the phenomenon of trance that it produces.
Yeah, exactly, Dr. B. And I think it's such an important area because the potential is immense and you've seen it in your career. And I guess that's what we're here to talk about today. But what I was thinking is you're one of the original practitioners of sport hypnosis. Can you tell us about sport hypnosis today and maybe how it's grown since it originated in the 70s and the 80s?
Well, I think that what we're seeing today is the expansion of the scientific exploration of not only the phenomenon of trance and that as an altered state of consciousness, as well as the expansion of how does this occur? What are the biological substrates? What are the neuropsychological substrates? What are the psychological substrates? What is the interface between the person engaging in the induction of hypnosis and the subject? How do their brain waves interact? There's some research now that's really fascinating about this conjunctive message sending that's nonverbal. That's it. How the trance state is evoked within the patient, and some of the most fascinating stuff that's going on now is being done by the superstars, if you will, of the research over the last several decades. You have Dr. Olaf Paulison down at the University of North Carolina here in the United States, who's just recently presented, and I was really fortunate enough to be there at his workshop. He unveiled this concept of unconscious subjective connectivity. So this concept that there is this subconscious connectivity that some people have as a natural genetic trait, that they have the ability to be in touch with and much more sensitive and aware of what's going on at other levels besides the ordinary kind of just conscious awareness. I'm hearing a sound, or I'm thinking that it's time to go, that kind of chattering part of the mind, that they also have this additional screen going where they can tap into their unconscious mind. And that this capacity of subconscious connectivity is what separates people who are highly suggestible and really can do remarkable things under hypnosis, as well as in that people who are in that subcategory have the ability to be highly creative. They really tap into that subconscious part of their mind. And they also have the ability to use imagery in some very powerful ways. And then you have the work of Lars-Erik Lunenthal, my friend and colleague from Sweden, who was so gracious in the early years to get my career started. I came into sports psychology really as kind of a person coming in from the dark, so to speak, and Lars-Erik welcomed me, and he, allowed me to interact. I had a great deal of experience coming in the application of clinical hypnosis. I was teaching at that time at Stony Brook University Hospital as a professor in psychiatry, and I was teaching hypnosis and biofeedback for pain management to psychiatric residents. So as I came into this field with this absolute kind of very novel set of expertise and knowledge that really was not even any awareness in the typical sports psychology bag of mental training skills. And Lars-Erik welcomed me, and he shared with me what the work he was doing on his inner mental training program, and he allowed me to take that and actually kind of transport it here to the United States in a modified form. And back in the early 90s, I created a program called the Mental Training Room. And that was the very first program available to athletes worldwide, because we sold it actually in cassettes and worksheets that were in a binder. And the program was the first hypnosis program for athletes that was available worldwide, which was called self-hypnosis and psycho-cybernetic imagery. And so I'm very grateful to Lars-Erik for his support over the years, as well as the fact that he is doing remarkable work in bringing up another dimension of sports psychology, where the athlete can use hypnosis in what he's called eyes open alert hypnosis. Eyes open alert hypnosis. And that has been used also in pain management, that approach that he's developed. And it's also led to a concept that he calls sport hypnotic state. And we're going to be talking about the concept of states in a minute when I talk about how I orient and educate athletes to what hypnosis is and how it works. But there's some exciting work being done. And just one more point. Being a member of the American Society for Clinical Hypnosis, ASH, I received their journal. And in the very last issue, the most recent issue of the Journal of Clinical Hypnosis, American Journal of Clinical Hypnosis, they devoted the entire edition to research, the current research on the neuropsychology, the neurobiology, the underpinnings of how does the trance state occur, what's going on at the physiological, biological, psychological level that allows us to go into this powerful state of altered consciousness where we're in this totally focused and narrowed attentional, intensified focus state where we're blocking out all other distractions, and we're very, very accepting to positive suggestions that we can use to bring positive changes into our behavior. This altered state of consciousness we call trance, so that the research on all these levels, Dr. Unenthal, Dr. Olaf Paulson, and all of these other researchers who are putting together this remarkable amount of scientific evidence, we're on this watershed, to this being something that's going to be available to all athletes and all performers within the next decade, I'm sure.
I really like what you've said there, John. And I think there is a lot of skepticism and apprehension just about the word hypnosis. I mean, when you mention the word hypnosis, people think, oh, am I going to lose control? So there's a lot of misconceptions about hypnosis. And I thought maybe we should just touch on if you could actually define hypnosis and how do you present it when you are using it with athletes?
Well, that's an excellent question, James. And you are clearly presenting the mystique and kind of discomfort I think many people have even with the idea of hypnosis, because it seems so mysterious. Mm-hmm. So I always begin my work with athletes by putting it right out to them. You say, okay, hypnosis is part of the the repertoire of strategies that we can use to help you find your way of performing at your best. But before we begin, tell me a little bit about, what you think of hypnosis, or, some ideas you have about hypnosis. What do you think it is? So I put it right out there to them, so that I can then directly respond to some of their concerns, or maybe some of their misunderstandings of it, in a personal, relevant way, rather than, just get up and start lecturing, well, this is what it is.
Yeah.
I try to have really kind of a dialogue with them, and attend to their concerns and apprehensions. And I think that works really well. That leads into then the educational component, because obviously, they're not as knowledgeable as I am. So I want to share with them what I have about what the nature of hypnosis is and how it works. Mm-hmm. So I started out, and this is kind of the start. Okay, let's start out with the hard part, and then we'll kind of break it down to more edible chunks. Yeah. So we start out with the kind of the scientific definition, which is hypnosis is actually, as contrary to what most people think is the state of unconscious, where their eyes are closed and they're unconscious and they're not in control. It's quite exactly the opposite of that. Hypnosis is defined as an altered state or unique state of consciousness, somewhere between sleeping and waking. And I would say, kind of maybe to the side of what people are achieving in meditative states. That's an altered state of consciousness as well, which also affects the way the brain works and neurological connections within the brain, the same as the trance state. But hypnosis is a unique state of consciousness in which your attentional focus narrows and at the same time intensifies, so that what you're aware of becomes very vivid, very clear, very, very present for you, very visceral. And at the same time that your attentional field is narrowing and intensifying, there's a corresponding sense of blocking out anything else that would distract you from it. One of the most well-regarded psychologists in American psychological tradition, E.H. Hilgard, said, hypnosis represents a capacity to concentrate attention and resist distraction. Yeah. I love that. That's so eloquent, that definition. In addition, while we're in that highly intensified attentional focus state, we're very, very open to positive suggestions, to things that can be helpful to us. And so that's where the whole concept of, hypnosis, where people are being provided with suggestions, because in that intensified state of attention, we are really, really open and capable of processing suggestions much more than in our normal awake state. In a normal awake state, if somebody said, and you will be able to give yourself more and more of a sense of calm and just feel more of a sense of peace, you would say, really? When am I going to do that?
Yeah. You're like, I don't feel
questions and all of the attentional barriers. Whereas in hypnosis, it's like, oh, that would be good. Yeah. Let's see how that works. You see, so that attentional focus and the ability to absorb and use positive suggestions. So that's the definition that I work with. And that's really, I think, the standard definition as we speak. That leads us into the educational phase. Mm-hmm. So then how do I assist this athlete into creating the right mindset? And that's really the key. Interestingly enough, most people think, well, I'm going to engage in hypnosis, and that's where I'm going to get the goodies. Starting there in hypnosis, there are stages of the hypnotic process. We start what's called induction, where we guide the person into the trance state. And then we do the hypnotic work. Then we do deepening. If you need to go whatever level, trance has a wide number of continuum from light to deep, with memory, it could be where it's almost like normal memory to really revivification, where it's actually experiencing it as if it's happening again. Yep. So that there's the number of continuum in the trance state. So depending on where you want to work with the athlete, you then define how deep we're going into the trance. And then you have the work that you're doing in the hypnotic state. Then you have the reorientation stage, where you bring the person from the hypnotic trance state back into the alert and awake state. So this, they think, oh, that's where all the work is going to be done. The fact of the matter is, if we go to our kind of our evil here for a minute, stage hypnosis, which has given us all the bad name, like, oh my God, hypnosis, or you're going to make me quack like a chicken, Dr. B?
That's what people think.
No, there's no quacking chicken in here, the chickens are outside, we're in here. The idea is that in stage hypnosis, because I actually taught stage hypnosis in San Diego for a number of years to make some money because it was a lucrative profession. There was a lot of nightclubs there that would like to have entertainers. So I taught them how to do the stage hypnotic process. And what you're doing there is you're creating suggestions before the person gets up on stage. So I would reach out to you to shake your hand, and I would touch instead of touching your hand, I'd touch your forearm. So you disoriented, like, and then I'd say, and it would be fun tonight, wouldn't it, if you wanted to be like a chicken?
Yeah.
And so now you're disoriented, and we'll talk a little bit of that in a minute. But I would put out suggestions to see if you bit, if you would be a highly suggestible person. So in the selection of the people for the stage hypnotic process, you're kind of doing all the work beforehand. Yeah. You're setting it. And so, and with sport hypnosis and with clinical medical hypnosis, what a person is expecting, the placebo effect is very powerful here.
Oh yeah, so
when a person gets a headache and they take 2 aspirin or 2 Advil, they say, "Oh, I feel better." Mm-hmm. That hasn't been able to be digested for another 20 minutes. Yeah. But you ask them 5 minutes later, "How are you feeling?" "Oh, I feel a lot better." It's the placebo, the belief that they're going to get better, that the mind actually allows the body to feel better. So that setting the stage, what are the expectations for when I'm in hypnosis? What am I going to experience? How's it going to benefit me? That's so valuable, not only in medical hypnosis, but also in performance hypnosis. So that's why I spend a lot of time, and we're devoting a good amount of time here in this interview to Dr. B's special version of the education process for setting the right mindset for going into hypnosis and what it is. And I always start with this. I say, we're experiencing the trance state, which is that state of highly focused attention and moving any actions away. We're experiencing that many times during the day, every day. And people look at me like, "Ooh, I'm in hypnosis every day. I didn't even know it. That's kind of weird." I said, "Yes, but we don't call it hypnosis. We call it daydreaming or spacing out."
Yeah.
And they go, "Oh." I said, "Do you ever daydream?" "Oh, yeah. I space out." And I was like, "Well, what's happening there? Talk to me." And they say, "Well, I'm sitting and I'm not moving, and I'm looking out the window and I see this blue bird, and it's kind of, I'm watching its little mini legs walk along the branch, and then I was like, oh, where was I? Oh, so I was supposed to be doing my paper, and then my roommate will come and say, Mike, what are you doing? I was calling you for 5 minutes. Didn't you hear me?" Yeah. No, I didn't hear you. So that when we go into these daydreams or times when we're spaced out, that's a trance state. We're highly focused and we're disconnecting from everything around us. And so Milton Erickson, the father of modern hypnotherapy, who we'll talk a little bit about perhaps going on in terms of his brand or his version of hypnosis, which is obviously called Ericksonian hypnosis or indirect suggestion. But Milton Erickson would said, when educating people, says, "Look, those are just common everyday trances."
Yeah.
So daydreams are common everyday trances. So that helps people, act more comfortable. So I know a little bit about that already. Yes, and that's a very powerful phrase to help people to relate to you as a sports psychologist, interacting with many athletes, as well as people who are watching our video tonight. And if you would like to help them learn more about an intervention, just use that kind of phrase, and you already know a little bit about this, don't you? And they'll say, "Oh yeah, I do." So now they're opening up many more pathways in their brain to learn, because it's like, "Oh, I'm familiar with that." Isn't like, "What are they talking about?" They want to jump in and really engage it more.
Yeah, you can integrate into the existing neural networks.
Exactly. Yeah. So, and then I said, "So you already know a little bit about this?" "Yes, I do." And I said, "Let's talk a little bit about something else that helps bring about the trance state. How does it work?" And I'll talk about this idea of just that the trance state, those are the phenomenon, but how does the mind actually create that? what happens from being just everyday thinking, and our everyday thinking, and I do a little bit of education here too. Sometimes I'll actually do a mindfulness practice with them at this point to say, let's talk a little bit about, we're talking about an altered state of consciousness. Let's talk a little bit about what consciousness is. How do you experience your consciousness? They'll go, well, I'm thinking and I'm remembering. And I said, yes. I said, let's divide consciousness into two parts. Let's divide the experience of what's happening in your mind into two distinct ways of the mind observing. One is the experiencing part of the mind. I'm thinking something, I'm having a feeling, I'm having a sensory input. I hear something, I get a smell of some wonderful things that's cooking. So it could be a sensory input, could be a thought or a feeling, it's internal. So that's what constitutes the experiencing part of the mind. It's chattering, things are bumping into each other, one's pushing the other the way. I said, and what other part of the mind is there? I don't know. What about the noticing part of the mind? So then I sometimes I will say, let's do a little bit of education right in the beginning, before we go into the formal trance training. I say, let's learn how we can be better at noticing, how we can bring that attentional part of the mind up to the surface. Yeah. And I'll do an exercise like, would you like to do an exercise with me right now? The people who are watching, would you like to take 2 or 3 minutes to do this introductory exercise? It's not very different than maybe some things you've already done if you've done meditation. But it's basically noticing what parts of the mind are doing the noticing and what parts of the mind are doing the distracting. So take a few minutes now and pay attention to the sound and the feeling of the air coming in and out of your nostrils. Really attend to the full experience of the air as it feels cool, as it comes in, as it's held, and as you breathe out, feeling it being totally connected to the sound and the feeling of the air coming in and out of your nostrils. And at some point, if you already have not experienced it, you may be aware that your mind will drift, might drift to an internal thought, like, how long am I going to be doing this? Or might drift to a sound in your environment, or you might get a little twitch or a tweak in your knee or in your back, and your mind will go there. And as soon as you're aware that your mind had drifted away, I want you to just gently label that, note it. Back feeling, noise in the kitchen, worry, whatever it might be, label it, and then gently bring your mind back to the sound and the feeling of the breathing once again. Good. Take a moment now and count from the number 1 to the number 3, opening your eyes and being fully present in this environment at the number 3. 1, 2, and 3. Excellent. So what we just did there, James, is introduce you to the terms that we're using. Altered state, highly focused attention, where you're bringing everything in just at one place, and the fact that there's really 2 variables. There's the noticing part of the mind, which is noticing that breathing, and then there's the distracting part of the mind.
Yeah,
it comes in, and you notice when you get distracted, because the noticing part of the mind says, well, I know I'm noticing I'm over here now. I'm thinking about my knee. Oh, okay. Now I can bring it back and notice the thing that I'm really intending to be focusing on, the sound and the feel. That distinction, that wonderful little education is so important in terms of helping athletes to become more comfortable with the idea of this trance state, because the trance state is this highly focused attentional state. Oh, I was kind of doing that in a small way. I was really focusing my attention on my breathing. Then I got distracted. Oh my gosh, I was easily distracted because something just came in and pulled me away. Then I labeled it and came back. And so we kind of have that sense of, okay, so those are the players on the stage. The noticing part, the attending really intensively, and the distracting part. And then I'll bring up to them, I'll say, you just discovered something that's really, really important for you as a performer. As far, you may be now at the grade school level, maybe you're in high school, maybe you're a Division I college athlete who I work with at Stony Brook University as a sports psychologist there. it doesn't matter. Maybe you're professional and work number with athletes, who've gone in the professional ranks and Olympians and so forth. It doesn't matter what level you're at. Your performance is always going to amount to this. Can you read this?
Yeah.
Is that right, Edgel? Okay.
Yeah, got it.
Your best performance equals winning the battle between focus and distraction. Your best performance equals winning the battle between focus and distraction. Is that visible there?
Yeah, got it.
So now that makes sense. Oh, yes. So I have a focus when I'm really paying attention in an intensive way. And then there's this sense of just kind of pulls me away.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we're saying, let's rate yourself as a performer as to how well you can notice and pay attention to the sound and the feeling you're breathing, well, I was doing really well until I got distracted.
Yeah.
And then not so well. So your performance is really a function. You're going to perform better to the extent that you win that battle, stay focused and not get distracted. Okay. And that goes back again to that definition that we brought up earlier, that eloquent definition by the psychologist E.H. Hildebrand. Hypnosis represents a capacity to concentrate attention and resist distraction.
Yeah.
If you're not really resisting it, it's the mind actually just pushing the distractions away in that hypnotic state. There's one other thing that I do, want to introduce them to in terms of understanding and educating them about hypnotic experience. And that is what happens in the mind, what structures in the mind are activated, what biochemical processes are kind of triggered to produce this trance state of highly attentive focus. And the research in the last 5 years has been really remarkable in this regard. We could, as you asked earlier, we're going to get into all the biophysiology and neurochemistry. And I said, no, that's way too complicated. And most people really don't want to know that. They're not they're not studying, neurochemistry or something. Mm-hmm. They'd like to say, well, how does my mind do that?
Yeah.
How does it get into this trance state? And what we've discovered is this incredible phenomenon called the orienting response. The orienting response. And then I try to kind of educate them and say, okay, what is this orienting response? Well, let's imagine, James, let you and I imagine, maybe, if I traveled to Australia, which I would love to do at some point in my life. And you said, Dr. B, there's this wonderful trail that goes through this remarkable, beautiful woods. It's spectacular. My daughter was living in Seattle, Washington, and we would go for hikes in the beautiful woods there. And the ferns there, James, were just magnificent because it was so moist there. The ferns were glowing, literally. They had this glow to them. They were so healthy. And so we'd be walking in the forest and the ferns were all around. And let's just say that we're on this trail. We're on a hiking trail. And on that trail, we're following the trail because on the trees that align the trail, there are these little white marks that they paint on the trees. Okay, you're on the trail. There's the trail goes this way. We look for the white marks on the trees. Okay. And if you see 2 marks, it says turn to the right, 3 marks, turn to. So we're working and we're talking, we're having a great time. We're following the trail. And then we get into a clearing. It's like, oh, okay. So it isn't just one, kind of one line of a trail. Now it's an open area. Yeah. And I say, okay, James, where do we go? And you and we're looking around and we don't see any white marks on the trees. Mm-hmm. Okay. I like the expression on your face. We don't see any white marks on trees. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? We're in the middle of the woods. And so at that moment, the orienting response kicks in. It's an evolutionary reaction that we've developed over time as human beings to survive. Mm-hmm. In situations where it's like, hey, this is danger here and you better figure out what you need to do right now. So the orienting response kicks in, and that's what that intensified focus is. You're not going to be thinking about, what time we're going to have lunch today, or I wonder if I left the door locked when I left the house. Those thoughts, or maybe there's a raccoon, peering out of the one of the trees with it. Doesn't matter. You're not going to pay attention to any of that.
Yeah,
you're going to focus your attention 100% in this intensified way on finding that little white dot that light paint on the tree that tells us where do we go to get out of this trail so we can go back to our car and go home. That's the orienting response. So let me share with you then how I put this together.
Sure.
I say, okay, there's this phenomenon which is very natural. It's a very natural part of our human experience. We have unconscious when we're sleeping, we have conscious when we're awake, and we have those two parts of the mind, the noticing part and the experiencing part, kind of vying for their place on the stage of the mind. And then we also have another state called the meditate or state of meditation, where that's another way that the mind can kind of be attentive to certain things, but disconnecting from others. And so we have these different altered states or conscious states of consciousness. Then we have this additional one, this new guy on the block, the trance state. And the trance state, if we can see this diagram here, the trance state really can be entered into by these three means. We can enter it, as we talked about in the beginning, through the daydreaming process, where we go into trance. That's our common everyday trance. We can enter into it through dissociation, being disoriented. I don't know what's happening. I have to really focus what's going on here. That triggers the orienting response. And we can enter into it through the stages of hypnosis, going gently into it through the induction process. So that really, when we talk about, okay, can I use hypnosis? Would it be good to use hypnosis? That's really not the question anymore. The question is, what's the best way for me to get into the trance state where I have this wonderful, just natural phenomenon of really being focused in an intensive way and not allowing myself to be distracted, and I'm open to positive suggestions. How do I get there? What's a get there? So, here, the one that's kind of at our disposal, we're not going to be trying to disorient people all over the place.
Yeah.
The one that's at our disposal is getting into the trance state through the vehicle of hypnosis. So that's the educational spiel, as they say. That's how I present it. And again, it's in an interactive way. How do you feel, having kind of gone through that educational kind of guided process? Do you feel more comfortable if somebody were to say to you, would you like to do hypnosis now? Would you be interested in finding a way to get into that special state of trance? How would you feel about that?
Yeah, I definitely feel much more comfortable knowing that we're just sort of tapping into the natural capacity of the mind, and this is how the mind works, and these states are actually more common than we thought, which I actually wasn't aware of. And basically, we're just using one capacity of the mind to help us perform at our best, just because in that state, that altered state, that's what it does naturally. So I feel much more comfortable after knowing how it works.
Yes, and I really appreciate your observation where you said, and we're just using one capacity of the mind to help us perform at our best. And if I could be so bold as to kind of anticipate our next question, like, okay, so here we are. So you've done the orientation, you've done the education. Let's get down to the work.
Let's get down to the brass tacks.
The process, the brass tacks. But I'd like to just work, and this is so important as a counselor, as a guide, as a teacher, as a sports psychologist. You really want to be attentive. You really want to be in tune with what the athlete is telling you and where they're at. And where you were at, that's isn't that remarkable that's one way, that's one function of the mind that allows us to perform at our best. Let's explore that observation. That the trance state that's produced by hypnosis is actually one way that we can do that. And I actually present this model to all my athletes because having been in the field for over 40 years and engaged in all sorts of things and seeing the trends that come up, what's coming up now that's helping us to identify how an athlete can use their mind and their mental state to perform at their best. And what I've come up with is this kind of model that says, this is what explains, to the best of our knowledge now scientifically, what it takes for an athlete, what functions. That here's one aspect of the mind. What other aspects of the mind are there in addition to that one, to the trance state. So let's take a look at this diagram here. I'm going to put it, position it. Is that good? So what we have here is a diagram of getting into the zone or your best performance state where everything is flowing. It's almost like you're working hard, but it feels just effortless. Time slows down. And interestingly enough, in that state, there's no sense of self-consciousness. Action and awareness are merging. That's the state. So when you're performing at your best, the first thing we've been discussing now is the top of the star. The trance state, this highly focused, attentional, intensified, focused state, which pushes away distractions and allows you to be open to positive suggestions, that's one contributing component. If we can activate that mental capacity, it's going to be part of the process of getting into your best performance. It's a component. Yep. Then we have the mindful awareness state, and there's such incredible research now. My friend and colleague Frank Gardner and his lovely wife Zola Moore. Frank and I are colleagues from having both graduated from Hofstra University and the PhD program there. But Frank Gardner, over the last 2 decades, has been the leading researcher in the way that mindfulness training improves performance. Mm-hmm. And so there's no question that's the state of mindfulness, of being aware of what's going on and being able to identify what you want to focus on and what you really want to just be aware of and not attend to. That volitionary thing, that's not part of the hypnotic state, but it's more of a mindful state. That's a component. That's a natural, normal thing that the mind can do. Then we have the flow state, and this is interestingly enough. Back, I remember when we first had the term, the ideal performance state or the ideal zone of performance. Before Csikszentmihalyi, Dr. Mikhail Csikszentmihalyi came away and said, "Oh, here's this state which produces happiness. It's called the flow state, and you're totally immersed." And we said, "Oh, let's borrow that. We'll make that the same as the ideal performance state. We'll just borrow that and use that term." But actually, if you read the book Flow, which is impossible to read because it's like a dictionary of terms, and it's about 4 inches thick. But the point is, it's about the psychology of happiness. Mm-hmm. And so the flow state, where we're in awareness emerging, you're totally connected to what you're doing. There's no awareness of anything other than the task itself. You're feeling very positive. You're feeling things are just going in the direction you want to. That's a component of performing at your best. And now we have other research that says, in addition to the flow state, there are certain athletes in certain situations in sports where we have to engage in another type of psychophysiological state called the clutch state. Yeah. And there's amazing research now going on with how the flow state and the clutch state interact with each other and kind of dance with each other in best performances. And then we have a state that I've kind of come up with a term for my own, the want it more state. When if you go back to the idea of the Newt Rockney story, and where he tells the coach, one day when the boys are down, coach, and he's on his deathbed, Frank Gipp, George Gipp, and he says, "Tell the boys to win one for the Gipper, get one for the Gipper." That famous story. And then you go out there, and Notre Dame kicks the butt, of Army in that second half of that game because they wanted it more. Yeah. The team that the team that wants it more. If you have that deep-seated hunger, this goes very similar to the work here. The want it more state is defined very much so by the form of psychotherapy that's very popular now, ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. If something's really, really important to you, then you're going to do everything possible and not let things get in your way to bring that about. You want it more. That counts. That's part of the state that gets you to perform at your best. Mm-hmm. So there's a blending of all of these factors, all of these different psychophysiological states work together. Sometimes you need to rely on more than one than the other, but they all are combining and kind of flowing one into the other to produce this state of you performing at your best. So I think that really puts our conversation about, oh, here's this expert, world expert in sports hypnosis, and he's going to, just identify hypnosis. No, it would be,
it's just one.
It would be like, oh, yes, it's really one cog, it's one element, And actually, the important thing here is also that hypnosis is not something that it's not an end. Oh, I want to get hypnotized or I want to use hypnosis.
Yeah.
Hypnosis is not an end, it's a means.
Mhm.
It's a vehicle into the trance state. It's up all these natural capabilities of the mind to do these things that you didn't have before you opened it up.
Yeah.
So I'm glad you gave me the opportunity by your observation. That's one mental state. It is one that was at the top. Then we have, the mindful awareness state. We have the flow state. We have the clutch state. We have the want it more state. And they're all contributing to how that athlete can perform at their best, particularly under pressure.
Dr. B, I really enjoy how you included hypnosis as a part of psychological skills training. So there are many components to performance, so the prongs of the star, and the trance state or hypnosis is just one. And yeah, I really enjoyed that. But I guess what many of the viewers are interested in is how can we actually use hypnosis to improve the way we perform? What does that look like in an applied setting?
Well, that's an excellent question. I think what most people are listening to this or watching this video for, like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
So let's get down to the the nitty gritty here. In my 40 years of work as a consulting sports psychologist and hypnosis expert in bringing hypnosis to the sports psychology interventions, I've noticed really that there are three components that are essential for the mindset for success for an athlete. That what they have mentally, emotionally, and physically kind of joining together, holding everything together, really can be identified by three essential mental components. One is the ability to have mindful awareness during performance, to have a mindful perception. I call it the 3D of awareness vision, 3D awareness vision. To have the capacity to have a destination. This is exactly what I want to accomplish here. This is exactly what it looks like. This is it. Not just in terms of, not the idea of the outcome, but the process. What does the process look like? Step by step, moment by moment, inning by inning, swing by swing, stroke by stroke. What does the process look like? I have to have a clear sense of the destination that I'm heading toward in this performance. An awareness, a mindful awareness during performance. The second factor is a unshakable level of self-confidence. There's no question. It doesn't matter whether you first started studying sports psychology in 1960 or it's going to be 2060. It'll always be the same. The most important thing for an athlete to have going into any competition is the sense of confidence. And confidence is three things. It's a way of feeling, it's a way of thinking confidently, and it's a way of acting confidently. And that is a critical component. It cannot be left out. So of the three things that constitute the mindset for success, one, mindful awareness during performance, two, unshakable level of self-confidence, three, a sense of mental toughness, a capacity to be mentally tough under pressure. Having that in your bank, having that in your well, and to be able to go to when you need it. And so those three elements, those three components are the things that we can really direct the hypnotic work toward building and that's really where it comes. That's really where the rubber meets the road right there.
Yeah. So I guess there, Dr. B, you've highlighted three components. So you've got mindful awareness, the unshakable self-confidence, and mental toughness. So it's really like these sound good in theory, but they're a little bit sort of abstract for some of our viewers. So would you be able to provide a applied or concrete example of how you've actually used these with an athlete?
Absolutely. This is, we're here in the month of August and in the year of 2021. And just going back 2 months to the spring, I was working with an elite international distance runner, Holly Manning, who actually lives and is back now in her native country of New Zealand. It was my honor and privilege to work with her for a number of years. And we engaged in all of the mental skills, including hypnosis, particularly for helping her draw confidence from her well, things that she was doing well, and using a hypnotic component for that, which we'll talk about in our next segment when we talk about confidence. And the other thing that we did was helping her develop this intense capacity to be mindful, to be aware of a number of things at the same time while she was performing. And so that mindful awareness was really developed by, number one, defining exactly what it is I want to be attending to. And that's really what we call creating a focus plan. So she wrote out exactly, what am I going to be focusing on my pre-race, when I'm warming up? What am I going to be focusing on in terms of drawing thoughts and imaginary ways of transferring what I did in practice, and setting personal records in my practice run, setting a personal record in my last meet, which was the winning the Colonial Conference Association Championship. What am I going to be focusing on drawing all those memories and emotions out to make me feel confident? What am I going to be focusing on at the very start of the race? What am I going to be focusing on when the doubt comes in? Here I am. And what else is there for me to be aware of? And the one thing that she brought over and over and over to the hypnotic work when we were doing this, when I said, what do you want to build in? What do you want to really have as this intense zoom in focus on that comes with the trance state? She said, a sense of appreciation and gratitude.
Yeah.
That I am here, that I had to wait an entire year, that my last year in the last university I was at got canceled through COVID. I had to wait an entire year to get here. I've been training all that time. I've devoted my entire life. When I came here to the United States, I wanted to race in a national championships. I am so grateful to be here. That sense of gratitude pervades my awareness. It's absolutely part of what I'm connected to, moment by moment, breath by breath. And so that sense of mindful awareness during the competition, of that being kind of the background and everything else kind of jumping out as foreground, that was incredibly important to her.
Yeah.
And she
they were
describes
her
that
values in that setting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. How important that was of what I want to do, what I've entire life to do. And that was the entire time she was performing. It wasn't like, oh, I thought about that before the race and I forgot about it. It was That was part of her mindful awareness. We really continue to build that in during the hypnotic work of her executing her focus plan during the race. And we did the hypnotic, kind of imagery of that going on. And so this mindful awareness, in addition to exactly what she was going to pay attention to in her running, that was clearly part of what she wanted to be aware of. Not in distance running, you can zone out. You can what they call go to sleep. It's like before, oh, what happened there? Oh, this person passed me. Because you're in that groove of the pace. So you have to continue to be awake, be aware of what's happening moment by moment, especially in an 800-meter race, because that goes pretty quickly. Although it is a distance race, it goes pretty quickly. So that's an example of how we took the hypnosis and helped her build this mindful awareness or capacity to have mindful awareness during that race. And for your viewers here, as we discussed, during our breaks, that a video of her discussing how she used the mental training to build that sense of mindful awareness is available on the Mind Plus Muscle YouTube station or channel. If you just go up to Mind Plus Muscle and type in Holly Manning, Mind Plus Muscle Holly Manning interview, you will find it. And there's a wonderful, interview that I did with her that shows the race and her talking about how she used all of these mental skills, including hypnosis, to cultivate this mindful awareness during the performance.
Beautiful. And I'll put a link to that in the description as well, Dr. B.
Okay. The second one, again, going back to the second mental capacity, unshakable confidence, we did actually two videos. One was of the conference championship, the Colonial Association conference championship, and how she cultivated this intense sense of confidence prior to and during that race by using a technique called going to the well. And going to the well is basically where athletes are trained to go through a 3-step process. One, start right away paying attention to everything you do well. Make a mental note of it as you're doing. Oh, that rep went well, or that exercise went well, or that drill went well. or, oh gosh, that was so terrific that I got that time on that race and how good I feel. Take a moment, connect to it, bring it in, actually bring it into this imaginary place inside of you we call the well, store it in there.
Yeah.
Second, write it down at the end of the day. This is what I stored in my well. This is an example here of a worksheet. You can, if you go up on the mindplusmuscle.com website, you can download this worksheet, the well. It's actually contained in an article. Yeah, it's contained in an article that's entitled Drawing Confidence from the Well, which is what I'm talking about, the 3-step process. That article is available on mindplusmuscle.com, which will be available at the end of the video. And if you just go up to the free articles page, you can download this article, which describes these 3 steps and tells you how to do it. But the first is capturing it, being aware of it, mindful awareness of it in the present. Oh, this is good. I want to hold on to this. This is giving me a sense of confidence, a sense of happiness, a sense of accomplishment. Writing it down in your journal at the end of the night. And if there are categories here: awesome performance, great practice, feeling happy, feeling confident and determined, good rest and nutrition. So there are elements that when you experience any of that during the day, something that fits into that category, write it in there, store it in there. And the third part is where we use the hypnosis. Drawing before the event, the night before or the morning of, we do a hypnotic exercise where the athlete goes and goes back in time. One of the phenomenon that's available in trance is what's called time regression. You can actually go back in time and experience things as if they're actually happening. I had an example that was so powerful one time. A woman came to me and she said, Dr. B, I'm beside myself. I can't find my other piece. Here in the United States, they had a contest, McDonald's restaurant had a contest called Monopoly. And if you got all the different pieces of the Monopoly board for Park Place and Broadway, if you got those 2 pieces, you won $1 million. Mm-hmm. And she says to me, Dr. B, I had Park Place, and now I got Broadway. I won $1 million, but I can't. It's in my house and I can't find it. Where is it? I can't remember where I put it. And I said, okay, let's do time regression hypnosis.
Yeah.
We'll have you go back to when you went in the house. You put your purse down. I did the time regression hypnosis. She remembered where she put it. The next day she went and she cast it for $1 million. And I said, I don't want a percentage. Just give me my fee for the session. That's it. Yeah. So it's a story, famous story. But that's where you can actually go back in time and experience exactly what you're feeling, because the intensity or the clarity of the hypnotic experience, the trance state, is so powerful. So you go back and you retrieve these experiences if you just had them, and then you transport them as an emotive, in an imaginary kind of sphere of all these energies and positive feelings of confidence, and you transport them using time progression. You're imagining now you're in a new place, and these emotions and feelings of confidence are there surrounding you, flowing through you. So we use that technique of drawing confidence from the well, and that's what she describes as this remarkable sense of confidence, more confidence she's ever felt in her life in anything, that was present in that most important race that she had been working toward her entire life, to win that conference championship and find and get a ticket to the national NCAA championship meet. So that's really what we're talking about. Drawing confidence from the well is where hypnosis can be so powerful in establishing that unshakable sense of confidence. The third component, mental toughness under pressure, it's really clear. Again, destination, direction, determination, the 3D awareness vision: destination, direction, determination. Here's where I want to be. This is exactly what I'm going to accomplish. How do I get there? What are the things I have to be focusing on and paying attention to and not be distracted? That's my direction, not direction by direction. And then the determination, and I will focus on that no matter what. That's where hypnosis is so powerful, because that no matter what component, you're so focused on the direction, what I need to be doing during that event, during that race, that anything that tries to distract you is just literally being pushed away. So that no matter what component is added to, it's not just, somehow I'll will it on myself. Your unconscious mind is letting you push that away because it needs to and it wants to. So we use hypnosis after the athlete creates the mental plan. And again, if you go up to the mindplusmuscle.com website, there is an article called Developing the Mental Plan, which will guide you through the entire process of how you create this plan, the focus plan about what you're going to focus on before the race, what your focus is on the beginning of the race, or the polo game, or the swim, or the hockey game. It doesn't matter, but you have a plan for, when I work with hockey players, the plan is, what am I going to be focusing on each shift? And if I'm in the third period, what am I going to be focusing on? Keep my legs moving. You want to keep your legs moving in that third period, because, that's where a lot of athletes start to get lazy. And all of a sudden the puck's on the other side, between them and their own goal. And that's not a good thing. So the point is that determining a sense of, or creating a sense of mental toughness under pressure is all about having a plan that you have in place, that no matter what, no matter what's going on, you say, okay, get back to the plan. I know exactly if I follow this direction, I will get to where I want to go. And that's being able to have that, knowing you have that is so reassuring to an athlete. It's not like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do now? It's like, no, I anticipated that. Now this is that was part of my plan.
Yeah.
Your plan is not only what you're going to focus on, but also how you're going to refocus. Once you get distracted, which will happen, or you start to find things that are going not the way you want, how do I get back to my focus? How do I get back to what I really need to be attending to? So you have to have a focus plan and a refocusing, which are part of the entire mental plan. So that's an example. And there's a second video of Holly Manning part 2 that identifies, we talk about in detail how she created that intense sense of mental toughness under pressure using her mental plan. So if you follow this video with those 2 videos, it really expand in a very lifelike way, where you're hearing from the athlete themselves how she was able to do that, develop those 2 qualities of unshakable self-confidence and mental toughness under pressure.
Beautiful. Yeah, no, thanks for that, Dr. B. And it's been really insightful to hear everything you've brought to us today and just to learn from your expertise. And I guess to wrap up the interview, if people wanted to learn more about sports hypnosis or maybe want to reach out to you, how would they go about doing that?
Well, the best way is to go up to mindplusmuscle.com, which obviously, if they want the free articles on drawing confidence from the well and developing the mental plan, they'll be there anyway. And there's an entire segment there on sport hypnosis on the website that explains, how sport hypnosis works, the type of sport hypnosis that I do, which is called Ericksonian hypnosis. So that's a kind of a brief to get started.
Yep.
And then from there, I think obviously they might want to look toward getting training in hypnosis through the American Society for Clinical Hypnosis, or whatever branches they have in their countries that are available. But they have training over the internet, which I've been taking regularly, and I still do on every other month basis. There's many vehicles obviously now worldwide for getting training by the best people in the world. I myself do supervision as part of my work. I am supervising a number of people who are learning to be sport hypnosis, using sport hypnosis practitioners. And start by just getting a primer, getting a sense of what it is, and go from there.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dr. B. We appreciate your time today.
Oh, it's been a pleasure, James. It's been really, I think, rather exciting and exhilarating to connect to this area of sports psychology with you. I appreciate some of the ways that you were triggering just exactly where we needed to go today, and that was a good dialogue, and I appreciate it. I appreciate it very much.
No worries. Well, yeah, it's been great to have you. I'd love to have you on in the future. Thanks, Dr. B.
You're welcome, James.